Why do we teach?
For me, education is about bettering the world. It is about a world that is more just and more equitable and not filled with so much hate.
What is the purpose of education?
I understand the purpose of education and the purpose of an educator, not to teach you what to think, but how to think.
There's a big difference between education as preparation for a career and education as enabling you to be an active and engaged and productive citizen.
We are trying to help them be thinking, engaged citizens.
I think education really needs to be a catalyst for change. We live in a really difficult and challenging world.
How do we get there?
It is about disruption. It's about coming up against these dominant forces with a question. It's not standing back and saying, I'm comfortable, here's what I do, here's my life, it doesn't affect me. It's coming up against these things and disrupting whenever possible.
If I say to you I'm engaged, you're going to think in your mind, to who? When it comes to marriage and proposals, we understand that engagement takes two. We understand that if you're engaged, it's because somebody made a proposal, somebody asked a question, somebody inquired. It's the same thing with learning. We expect young people to engage without any questions being asked. We expect them to say yes when the proposal hasn't been made. So what people understand to be the achievement gap, I understand that to be a complete fallacy. What we're looking at is an engagement gap.
We started to use the term MEDIASPHERE, meaning all of your conscious moments are in the MEDIASPHERE. Everything that you do, things that you think about, everything is contextualized within this MEDIASPHERE. And as the people who control different aspects of the MEDIASPHERE have become more and more sophisticated about getting and keeping your attention, this led to the work that people have done on the attention economy. You actually have to compete with the attention economy in the MEDIASPHERE in order to even teach kids in school, because we know for sure, based on all the research, you do have to get attention in order to teach and for kids to learn.
Literacy just constantly changes, and it changes with our technologies, it changes with the world we live in, it changes within the context of our countries and our communities.
When you use the term text, you shouldn't just automatically assume that texts are print. Anything can be a text if within a certain cultural system, a certain semiotic system, that it helps you assign meaning to something. If it's a video, if it's a picture, if it's a certain kind of performance, those things all are legitimate as texts. Everything that we've done since, I would say at least since the mid-90s, has been organized around textuality that assigns different kinds of meaning through affordances of multimodal texts.
Literacy for me is about having power and understanding things. So I became really interested then in critical digital literacies, because my lens for literacy at that time then shifted, because I continued to be really interested in how power moves. Who has power? Who doesn't have power? What makes a person powerful? Which is all caught up with what makes a person literate.
There's no such thing as a neutral text. There's no such thing as a neutral text producer. Anytime somebody creates text, or they use multiple texts to create some sort of textuality, some sort of textual meaning, textual understanding, that it always has to do with power, and if there is power, there's always a power differential. And there are always people who work to control the dominant discourses and people who they want to dominate, so the oppressed.
When I talk about epistemological oppression, epistemological injustice, that is literally the act of repressing knowledge. Critical media literacy is absolutely required for epistemological freedom. Everything you watch, everything you take in, every single aspect of it has the power of subliminal indoctrination. If there's any skill that you should walk away from a learning experience with, it should be the ability to navigate and to understand and decode for yourself what it is that is ultimately impacting you.
Critical media literacy is a theoretical framework and practical pedagogy that involves identifying, analyzing, and challenging media that promote representations or narratives involving racism, sexism, classism, homophobia, and other forms of discrimination that further marginalize targeted social groups. This framework deploys a variety of theories and perspectives to engage a full range of the politics of representation, and offers us a strategy for counteracting hegemony by exposing its construction and unveiling the biases inherent in all communication. In the hundreds of interviews with educators and researchers that I have conducted in my 15 years in higher education, a consistent theme in regards to the purpose of education is to promote higher order thinking skills in the interest of improving lives for all individuals, dismantling systems of oppression, and creating a more equitable society overall. To me, it has become increasingly apparent that we can reach these goals by incorporating strategies informed by critical media literacy in our everyday pedagogy and practice.
Historically, media was utilized as the vehicle for racist ideology. It was used as the vehicle for racial stereotypes. And because that vehicle has been on the road so long, racism has literally become a tradition of the United States and the world. People don't question it, they don't think anything of it because it's literally the air that we breathe, it's the water that we drink. But even so, it's still a social construct. And just like it was built, it can be dismantled. But people have to have the ability to understand that it's not just a fixture. They have to have that understanding, and you can't have that understanding without being able to critically analyze what is considered to be the norm.
We assume this is the way the world is, this is the way the world has always been, this is the way the world will always be. Arguably every class I teach, regardless of subject matter, one of the things I try and get students to do is to recognize that the way things are is not the way things have to be. That the way things are, it had to be constructed. It had to be built. And if it had to be built, it means it can be unbuilt.
From the time kids can start thinking about what is the curriculum, they can also think about whose curriculum, where did it come from, what are some different perspectives on this same thing, where can we look to find out more information.
I'm a firm believer that project-based learning, whether it's digital media or any other kind of, building something or what have you, has the potential for really rich, and I pardon, maybe it's a little cliche, but authentic, really genuine learning experiences.
When I was first starting to do this back in about 93, 94, and working to set up a high school literacy lab, one of the first things we encountered with the school administration is, well, you can have all the money to set up this lab, but the kids, their ISTEP scores have to go up. So that was their state mandated standardized achievement test. And we thought, my God, how are their ISTEP scores going to go up when they come to school and they're spending all their time engaging in media projects? They're doing something that they think is really powerful, and they invite their parents to come to open house to see what they've created. And then what we found out early on was their damn ISTEP scores did go up. They were coming to school where normally they wouldn't. And because they had to use print literacies along with these other literacies, they spent more time just engaging in the work and doing it for a purpose, something that was personally relevant. And it actually had an effect on raising their damn achievement scores.
I asked each student to create a digital story, like a 5 to 7 minute movie that they shot, edited, that involved a first-person interview on a topic related to water that they chose. The level of engagement was unparalleled. I was like, what's going on here? I started to better understand my desire to put the technology in their hands so that they can do what's essentially now called youth participatory action research. They've got to absorb that information and then be able to turn it around in this multimedia fashion. It's asking a lot of them, and they are up for it. For some reason, it just really engaged them.
I look at critical media literacy and the act of developing it as as a strategy of a culturally responsive educator. A culturally responsive educator is always going to seek to bring in the lived experiences and the perspectives of those who they're working with, who they're teaching, who they're learning from. And critical media literacy allows for that. My hope for humanity and mankind is that people would be able to start to function in who they are as multicultural beings beyond the fallacy of race, beyond the prescribed racial identities that limit human interaction, but also human understanding. That's my hope, that's my wish, that's my prayer. So yeah, call me crazy, but
I support it.